Congratulations, you have found the Lambcast, the official podcast of the large association of movie blogs, also known as the Lamb. The Lamb is the largest collective of online movie blogs and podcasts with 2,000 members and counting. Every week on the Lambcast, various members of the Lamb community get together to talk about our favorite subject, movies. So bookmark the Lamb and follow us on social media. Be sure to join us each week to hear a lively discussion of films and movie-related talk from our members. Join the flock at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Lambcast. This is episode 752 and I'm your host Richard Kirkham from Kirkham A Movie A Day. This week we discover that not all who wander are lost. Robert Frost said it best, "Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." Today we're going to make a difference for you. We're having another of the off-the-beaten-path experiences. Although it might be an oxymoron, I did give directions to the podcast. Be prepared to talk about a couple of movies that you've not covered before, that you've not written about, that you didn't do a podcast on the movie with anybody else, and ideally, you haven't seen anybody else covering the film either. Of course, I know that last one is a tough requirement, so don't think it's a deal breaker. The movies that we talk about this week don't have to be obscure. They just have to be uncovered. There are lots of movies that people have heard of, but no one has spent time talking about. But that's what we're ready to do, to provide it for our audience, some insight into these films that we've seen and like. Our band of travelers today does not number 9, but I think it will be a fellowship that is quite rewarding. Realizing that you don't just walk into Mordor, Nicole Ayers from the Mad Lab Post joins us for a hike to discovery. Welcome, Nicole.
Hey, hey, hey.
Dave Anderson knows you can't herd cats. This week, as he meanders in the film pasture, he's learning that it's hard to herd lambs as well.
How you doing?
Doing pretty good. And you could get lost at sea without a sextant. Thankfully, Damien Riley at least knows how to locate the North Star, although he thinks that means Tom Cruise. Welcome, Damien.
I got my hand on the rudder, man. I'm ready to go.
Well, I'm glad we're ready to go because that's what we're going to do. We're going to go off in search of films that we are interested in talking about that we haven't seen others talking about. We'll do a round robin, a couple of films. If you guys have a third film, we can include it as well. But we're going to get started here first with Nicole. Nicole, when you were off the beaten path, what films have you encountered? What's your first film?
My first film is a documentary titled From Jailhouse to Millhouse. Have any of you heard of it?
No.
No.
I have not. Love that.
Okay. Oh, great. Because all of my picks are documentaries for this
What
episode.
about you? That's interesting. Oh, you mean for the show?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
I saw this movie in September, I think, in Philadelphia during the Women's Film Festival. And I actually had just came back in town from a trip to Baltimore. So as soon as I got off the train, I went to the festival, directly to the festival. I think. I don't know. I don't even remember where I dropped my luggage. Anyhow, I really like this movie. It is described as the courageous journey of an actress by the name of Pamela Hayden, who is the voice of Milhouse on the TV show The Simpsons. After surviving an abusive boarding school and juvenile jail, as well as some other setbacks, Pamela now speaks to teenage girls about overcoming obstacles and turning their dreams into reality. Now, according to the description, it says her story is told with surprising humor and great candor. And I definitely agree with that. I liked how the people who made the movie used humor to tell a story about how one human being turned their traumas into triumph, is still living to tell the tale, and continues to have an optimistic outlook on a series of unfortunate events that they endured and on life. So I think that for those who, even if you don't like The Simpsons, I think that you might find this movie to be inspiring, um, at least, and very funny at best. She jokes around a lot, and despite there are some scenes in the movie that cover abuses that took place at a boarding school that she went to, and these abusive behaviors were ignored by parents of the kids that were there, which I found to be very, very disturbing. Now, unfortunately, this film still is to uh, appears to still be screening on the festival circuit. So I've been unable to find it on like Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or anywhere. However, I noticed recently that with a little bit of Googling, there is an eventive.com link from the Portland Film Festival from their 2023 lineup. And that particular link appears to still be active. But for everyone listening, you know, I didn't view it again, but it appears that I looked at some other eventive links from other film festivals, and the page says this is no longer available. Whereas the Portland Film Festival's link gave me the option to like buy now or check out now. So if you're looking to check this out through that link, if you don't want to like wait to see if it'll be available on another VOD service, the film does also have its own website, and Pamela Hayden also has a Facebook page. But if you go to the Portland Film Festival's link, rent at your own risk.
Well, even though it's off the beaten path, you've tried to give us directions and a pretty good map to finding it, and it sounds interesting. And you said you saw it at a film festival?
Yes, I saw it at a film festival called the Women's Film Festival. The venue was located in Old City, Philadelphia.
I'm sure there were lots of films available at the festival. Why did you happen to pick this one to see?
I Oh, Richard, you could send me. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole with this, but
Okay.
basically, yeah, because it might get a bit much. But I do like The Simpsons, although it's been a very long time since I watched that show. As we all know, adulthood can get very busy. So I dedicate more time to movies if I can than to television shows. But I've always liked Bart Simpson. Millhouse has always been really cool. But I wanted to watch this because I think that voice actors don't get a lot of attention in the mainstream realm. And I liked the fact that they decided to program a film that wasn't about like a celebrity or like a rock star or someone who's well known. Never heard of this lady ever in my life, so I don't know who she is. And the if the description didn't mention Millhouse, I probably would have skipped it. So I thought I liked how they used, her role to kind of show a window into that world, what it's like to be a voiceover actor, and to build a career in an industry that's very difficult. And then I also wanted to find out what she overcame, because I've been dealing with some personal challenges uh, throughout the pandemic, totally not related to COVID. And I still find myself trying to find a way to like wake up in the morning. So I figured like, okay, this lady seems to be, maybe she might have, some answers.
Okay.
So that's why I picked this film. And then I also picked it because the other ones just weren't conducive to my schedule. Like it was playing at the right time
Hey,
at
sometimes
the
that's the
right
best reason to see a
place.
movie. It's what starts next.
Yes.
Good deal. Dave, how about you? You're on the path now. What rabbit hole are you following?
I'm following the apocalyptic disaster movie rabbit hole. Specifically, some lower budgeted ones because it's always interesting to me to see how filmmakers depict global disasters with limited finances. And the first one is really, really, really old and is called Deluge from 1933. And it's a disaster film from the good old pre-code days with elements that probably wouldn't pass muster if had the code been in place, which it was, a couple years later. And it's one of the earliest examples of an effects-driven disaster movie, and probably one of the stranger ones too. And this one's structured a little bit differently than disaster films, as the ones that I grew up with, in that it wastes no time establishing the upcoming cataclysm, the very first scene, in fact, in which a global disaster is happening through a series of actually just gobs of things happening all at once. The weather's turning nasty, earthquakes and tsunamis, and there's no concrete explanation, but some of it is apparently, triggered by an eclipse, of all things. And though we're brought to understand that this is a global disaster, most of the action focuses on the destruction of New York City. And these scenes are really long and pretty impressive considering this is a 91-year-old movie. And it's mainly done with miniatures and rear projection and some really neat matte paintings. And I've always had a soft spot for matte paintings. I just think they're wonderful. And, of course, some scenes of stock footage.
I'm sorry,
But
what
buildings,
is a matte painting? Just real
a
quick
matte
for me.
painting, it's basically a photoreal depiction of something that just can't be achieved with regular miniatures or other special effects that would be
You
very
have, like,
cost
an
effective.
example?
To me, the best
I can look
examples,
it up later.
I've always been impressed with the matte paintings that were used in a movie called Earthquake, which they're paintings that show Los Angeles after an earthquake has devastated that city. And it's actually a painting. But it looks, while you're watching it, it looks like it's real.
They're
How
often
did you like
painted.
that?
They're often painted on glass and then superimposed over other images to give the impression of scale or height. Uh, uh, they don't build an entire um, fortress. They build the door to the fortress, and then over the door they superimpose a matte painting of what the fortress would look like, and then you do a perspective shot so you see the door in the spot where the fortress would be, and then in the you'd see the fortress in the background. So matte paintings are just a special effect, but they're a particular kind of special effect, and they're often quite beautiful. The early Star Wars films are filled with fantastic matte paintings of worlds that don't really exist, and they didn't build sets for. They just had these paintings of what Mos Eisley looked like, or what's going on in the background on the Death Star.
Thank you. Boy, I learned something new about film. I mean, at least I know what you're talking about now. And I do see that. Like you said at the very beginning, I'm sorry to talk so much, but you were talking about, like, with you were fascinated by the films that cover disaster with lower funding. Like, they didn't have the high funding for the film.
Hmm.
And that sounds like maybe you could get a lot for your money, out of that, because you got just the paintings that you could, pan back and forth, things like that in the painting rather than, going to different locations all the time.
Yeah.
Well, you explained it better than I did, Richard.
Oh, well, sometimes it just helps to have been someplace where they explained it in great detail. I've been to the TCM Film Festival a number of times, and Ben Burt and Dave, is it Dave Barron? Rob Barron have done presentations, and they're both Academy Award winning sound and effects artists. And one of the best examples was in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, which you don't think of as being a special effects film, but all that stuff on the bridge with Jimmy Stewart, it was all a series of matte paintings imposed on some film process. So it's been around for a long time, and like you said, Dave, if you're showing the decline or the destruction of New York City in 1933 films, almost certainly that's the technique that they're using.
Okay. Anyway, so this sequence, buildings shake and topple. The earth literally rips open and swallows whole sections of the city, and a tsunami roars through the streets of New York. This sequence alone makes the film worth checking out. And this all happens in the first 20 minutes of the movie. The rest focuses on two main characters. The first one's a guy named Martin. He's a lawyer, and he's searching for his lost family, and eventually he gives them up as being, figures they're dead. And the second is Claire, who is a professional swimmer who ends up in the hands of a couple of really rapey guys who, they're fighting over who gets to have her. In fact, the main guy, Jepson, kills his friend so he doesn't have to share her. But in the meantime, Claire gets away, and then she's eventually rescued by Martin, and they eventually fall in love. And later in the film, they come across a group of people who are trying to restart civilizations. At the same time, they've also got to contend with a gang of thugs that are now led by Jepson, who still wants Claire for himself. And complicating matters is Martin discovers his family is still alive, leading to something of a love triangle. The second half of the film is not as interesting. It kind of descends into some melodrama, but it does get pretty dark. Particularly, it's suggested sexual violence perpetrated by these characters who are pretty repellent. And the film also ends on a fairly somber note, especially for one character in particular. But it is worth seeing it as being an early example of the apocalyptic disaster movie. It's not the first, but it's definitely the first to depict massive amounts of destruction fairly convincingly. I remember first watching this a couple of years ago and just thinking, wow, they're destroying New York decades before Roland Emmerich was even born. And interestingly, the special effects were reused in a lot of other films too, including one called SOS Tidal Wave, which builds its entire plot around these destruction scenes that were originally in Deluge. You wanted us to talk about where we can find this. It's on YouTube right now, and it's also on Blu-ray from Kino Lorber, and that's the version I watched.
Okay. The Kino Lorber release, is that a standalone, just that particular film, or is it in a series?
It's just that film.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I probably will be looking for it on YouTube first before I decide to spend the money, but it sounds intriguing. I think I've heard of this before. I'm sure I've seen a clip or two, but I don't remember ever encountering it. So it sounds like something that people would be interested in.
You've probably seen a clip or two in other movies.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, because they're not going to let that production value go to waste. They've got it in the can. They're going to use it somewhere.
I think I read, I don't remember which studio bought the rights to Deluge, but they bought it exclusively to reuse that footage in other productions. And this was a film that for a long time was considered lost until about 2016.
Wow.
When it was.
Well, good. That is an off-the-beaten-path film. Damien, I think I remember that you were heading out to sea for your films.
Yeah, I covered Blackbeard. I'd always heard about Blackbeard, and it was a 1952 movie. It's actually Blackbeard, The Pirate. That's the title. And I looked at a lot of sort of the first 10, 15 minutes of seafaring films, if you take my meaning. That's kind of what I searched for. And I don't know why I've been kind of drawn to those lately. Probably a couple reasons. Probably the main reason is, my car got totaled it's going to be about 3 months now. It's like mid-July. Somebody hit me head on. I've talked about it on here, I think, a couple times. But and so I just woke up in the hospital. It was the first time in my life I'd ever blacked out. And the nurses and everything told me, you're doing fine. Everything, your vitals are okay. But I could have died. The lady hit me going 90, they said. The police told me that. And I was just turning left. So she just hit me kind of out of nowhere. Anyway, and after all that drama, but, so I've been riding the bus. That's the point I'm getting to. And I'm about to get a new car, but honestly, I'm saving about $650 a month without a car. So I'm doing pretty good on the bus. I just go to 2 different locations here to teach up in the high desert. And, in the mornings when I get up, it's like 4:45 because I got to get on the bus. The bus just has certain times it leaves. It's a very kind of remote location where I live in the high desert of Southern California. And we have like a hospital here. We have a Circle K, and there's a few other things, but you really got to go into Victorville to get to the town. And so the buses don't run every hour like I'm used to. Rich, I know you come from Fullerton, where they probably come every half hour. But they don't. But I literally have to get up when it's dark, and so I've been doing that for 3 months. And when I get up, I don't know. There's like this primal feeling, almost like at sea. Like I'm in a movie, and I don't know. It's danger. It's just I can't really describe it. But I thought, wouldn't it be neat to start looking into some of the seafaring films where these guys are out on ships. And I started kind of looking for those films. I watched Castaway again. That is just an amazing film. But then I thought, let's go back a little. Let's look at some. And then when this came up and this was open to accept, I thought I'm gonna go on YouTube and I'm gonna look for seafaring films, the lore of the sea, kind of that same feeling I get at 4 in the morning, And I came across Blackbeard, and I just really loved it. It was just really an amazing film, and it is available now. Rich, I don't expect you to have seen it yet, but I sent you the links to my 2 films. Did you happen to get those?
I did get the link to the 2 films, but I have seen this film.
Oh, good. I just meant like people to put it out there. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll tell
people
people
about it. Yeah, and I got to tell you, and I'm looking forward to hearing your opinion on this, Rich. But this is like, I think they really drew very heavily for the Pirates of the Caribbean on this. I mean, do you think so? Yeah.
Oh,
okay. Yeah, because I'm not really into that movie. I've seen it a couple times, just for the trendiness of it is when I went to see it. But this whole Bill Turner seems to be based on the father of the model-like woman. There's a really beautiful woman in it. I'm sorry I don't have her name, but
Linda Darnell.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, she's like in a showpiece. She's just so beautiful, and so she's fun to just enjoy her lines, and she just turns her chin perfectly, and it's just. Here's the thing I wanted to say about this film. It's like, not only does Blackbeard, remind me a little bit of Jeffrey Rush, and the way he talks in Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's like it's so raw, Rich. It's like we make fun of movies like this. People, younger than me, probably in their 20s and stuff, like my students' age, they make fun of movies like that. I think of The Princess Bride, and they make fun of the Six-Fingered Man and all that. And it's funny, but there actually are movies, the Errol Flynn type movies, and all that stuff, that I think we get so cynical, we make fun of these old movies, but when you really watch them, and you get like the raw feeling.
My memory is that the conclusion of this movie is really disturbing and raw. Because Blackbeard basically is executed in a very unpleasant way. that's the finish of the film.
Yeah, and there's scenes like where the hero guy is running a knife across his jugular and talking to him while he's doing it, and you got this Blackbeard who just, I mean, you know what it reminded me of? Like when you go to like the Segerstrom Theater and you watch an amazing performance of Scrooge, you know, and at the end he comes out and everybody stands up. You know, that I just felt like I was watching something on stage.
Yeah, no, I could see that. And
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say the star Robert Newton. I think this was probably his most significant part. He was, you know, he was an actor who appeared in a lot of English films, but this was one of those ones where I think he was very noteworthy. He's playing a dark character, and I'm trying to remember. I think he ended up doing not a sequel, but like a companion piece too. Another, or he.
I probably will check it out because I really
yeah.
Going to go on my list of like feel good type movies. You know, like you know, Kicking Back, Grading Papers, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
It's perfect for that because just the cadence of his voice, the pirate like. Well, it's not pirate like. That's what I'm trying to say. This is like a Source movie that we make fun of, but we don't ever really. People, I don't know. I don't. Maybe other people do. There's people on the Lambcast that I listen to that just are so cued in. You know, Todd Levin now, some of these guys, they just are so cued into these Source movies. But I kind of came into the pirate movies like making fun of them. Do you know what I'm saying on that? And so, but this is not making fun of anything. This is like a real melodrama pirate movie, you know? It's just really there. And so I really recommend it, and it was just such a joyful experience to find it for free, for one thing. And there's some playlists on there too. I'll send you as well.
All right.
Share 'em.
Well, we'll make sure that some of those things get put in the notes.
Sure.
I want to get back around to Nicole here. Nicole, did you have a second film that you wanted to tell us that you found out in the woods?
Yes, Richard, I thought you were going next.
I am going to go next, but you know what? I'm going to go back to you first because I do know you have a hard exit, and I want to make sure you get both of your films in at least.
Okay, thanks so much. I actually brought 3 just in case we were able to fit the hour, but the next one is short. It's called Nothing Left Undone: The Art of G. It's a 20-minute short documentary directed by Matthew Ober. It came out in 2023, and the director is actually my neighbor, sort of. I have a artist studio in a building that has other artists, like painters, photographers, some small businesses, a bakery, etc. And so that's how I learned about this movie. But I was unable to catch it at a film festival. It screened at like the Ocean City, Maryland Film Festival and the Allentown Festival, among some other ones. But I saw it this summer, earlier this year in July, when Matthew sent me the YouTube link. It follows a Philadelphia artist named G. Kellum, who prepares for an upcoming gallery exhibition. Now, G is described by a local art gallery as a mixed media artist who draws from Buddhist and Taoist philosophy, action painting, science fiction, architecture, hip hop, and global history to create his art pieces. And he's been an artist in Philadelphia for over 50 years. But this particular short documentary is focused on him as he's getting ready to exhibit some of his pieces. And it also covers his reflections on his artistic origins, his philosophy on life, and his complicated relationship with success. And according to the director, they follow the flow of G's thoughts covering everything from serendipity to binary code. And I enjoyed the movie. Besides the fact that I don't know them personally, but I've seen them in the building. I know the director, Matt, and the artist, G, actually. He has a studio in the building where he does his paintings for his gallery shows. I really enjoyed the beautiful, I think this film has some really beautiful shots. So kudos to the cinematographer. And I really loved Matt's directing and the sound treatment throughout the film. I know that some people might not pay attention to the audio mix when they're watching a movie, but I think it was done really, really well. And I think it was also funny to learn that G doesn't exactly remember his age. So on any given day, he might be 76 or like 73. And for people who don't like to answer the question, hey, how old are you, when they're at like a party or somewhere, I think this could be like a good approach. Like, hey, so how old are you? I don't know. Like, I don't remember.
If you're old enough, cool. You can get away with that. You say, I forget if I was born in this year or that year. It was one or the other. I'd have to check my birth certificate. Well, that's another one of those interesting connections that you have, that it's your neighbor who made the film and that the artist in the space is not too far from you either. I think Philadelphia is just full of stuff that you're exploring and you want to share with everybody.
Yes, it is. But I like New York more. Even though I live in Philadelphia and I'm from here, like, I hate it so much that when people in other states ask me where I'm from, I say I'm from Pennsylvania. And one time, there was a guy at a reception who told me that he's never heard someone say that they're from Pennsylvania. But that's how I answer the question. Where?
Oh, I'm completely off track on this, but I have a memory of an episode of Hawaii Five-0 from when I was a kid, where there was a guy who was a killer, and the woman who was able to identify and relate with him was from Pennsylvania, and that's the way he referred to her, as Pennsylvania. Hey, Pennsylvania!
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, old man story there. Well, speaking of old man stories, let me get in my first off the beaten path film. It's actually a film that is, well known, and it was actually nominated for Best Picture, but I have not seen anybody writing about it. For years, it was not available. It's on a DVD and a Blu-ray, both of which are out of print, and if you want to buy them, you can buy them, but you're going to be paying a little bit more for them than you might have if they were more readily available. And it wasn't streaming anyplace. But this last year it started streaming again, and I found it on my Criterion channel, and I watched it, and I quite enjoyed it. And I'd only seen it the one time when it was released back in 1985. It's Kiss of the Spider-Woman with William Hurt and Raul Julia.
Title.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's apparently... I did know that they made a Broadway musical of the story also. I don't think that the musical is based on the film. It's based on the original book. But I could be wrong about that. And that it's being remade, and Jennifer Lopez is going to star in it as a musical.
No.
So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. But in the film, the story is basically that these two prisoners in a South American hellhole of the prison. One is a gay man with trans tendencies, and he's been there for a while. He's there for immoral behavior, and the other is a political prisoner. And they pass the time by having the one, Luis, who is played by William Hurt, and he's the gay man, telling the plot and story of films that he remembers. And he doesn't remember them exactly. He just tells the stories in the ways that he sees them being interesting. And the main one is, it appears that it's a Nazi propaganda piece about how the French underground was maliciously betraying the French people and hurting the Nazis, saving France from its demise. Kind of ridiculous sort of stuff, but he didn't care about any of the political stuff. He was just interested in the love story of this beautiful French woman, and he would spend minutes in the film describing her luminous appearance and her chiseled face and how she fell in love with this man and what a perfect match they were. And he's a captain in the SS, so it's hard to make him a romantic hero. But in this film, that's the story that he wanted to tell, was the love story, because that's all he was interested in. And of course, this is very offensive to his cellmate, and they have to just kind of agree to how the story is going to be told. And it's the story about how these two people, Luis and Valentine, who is the political prisoner, kind of form a friendship and work together to survive in the prison. There's a subplot about betrayal and utilizing what's going on in the prison as a form of information searching in order to find a political group that the government is after. And it's set in the time down in South America when several of those countries had military dictatorships and were doing exactly those kinds of things. So it's quite realistic in terms of the storyline. I think it's almost certainly those kinds of things happen. But it's really a performance piece for the two stars, and William Hurt won the Academy Award for Best Actor in this film. He'd been nominated, I think, 3 times before for much more conventional roles. This film, I'm watching the first 5 minutes of it, and I'm thinking to myself, this is as if an actor was given the opportunity to present all of the monologues that he did when he was auditioning that he was really good at, and he has these great moments in the film that they're all just about exaggerated performance and doing things. And there's a sequence that's maybe 20 or 30 seconds long where he's actually acting with his feet as he walks across the floor of their jail cell. It just is very impressive, and it's understandable, I think, why he won the award. And it's an interesting film. It has a kind of a sad outcome, but it's, to me, of course, the reason that I think a movie fan would be interested in it is because it's being told through this weird story about the French and Nazi love affair.
I'm interested. I definitely want to check that out.
I remember seeing this on HBO or something like that back in the 80s, and to show you where my where my taste lied back then, I thought Raul Julia was kind of a revelation in that, because I'd only seen him in things like the Gumball Rally and Eyes of Laura Mars, and I'm watching that going, hey, it's that guy, because to me he was just, it's that guy.
Yeah.
And he was really impressive in that film too.
He was very good in it. I caught up recently with the I guess it's Amazon Prime remake of Presumed Innocent, which they did as a series, and I'd seen the original film, and I'd read the books, the book Presumed Innocent, and there was a follow-up also from Scott Turow, and Raul Julia played this character in the first movie, and he was perfect in that movie. He was great. I really look forward to seeing him, and then they did a TV movie later on, and Hector Elizondo played the same character. So when I was watching this updated version of Presumed Innocent, I kept waiting for that character to show up, and I realized maybe the 3rd episode in, he's not going to show up. They've replaced him with another character. They make a vague reference to the character that appeared in the original film, but it's got nothing to do with what's going on in this story, and it was just... But I thought of Raul Julia because he was so perfect in that role also. Yes, no, he was excellent in this film too, but let's face it, he didn't have the showier part. Well, Damien, what's your next film? Yeah, I'm going out of order here, so you got to be ready.
No, I'm ready. I tend to go on, though, so feel free to cut me off. I know we're on a time crunch. But this is a short story that I've taught for years, and I fell in love with it when I was in high school. But I teach it now to college students, and when I do my short story stuff, and it's about a guy. It's called The Most Dangerous Game. And it's about, I think the author's name is Richard Jenkins. I can't remember what his name is. Here I'm saying I teach it, but anyway, I don't have something in front of me, forget it. But it's just so neat to watch this movie because it makes the short story sort of come alive with this particular director's vision of it. And it is from I believe the late 40s. It's really old. And I saw a colorized version that's also on YouTube. Just so pleased that YouTube is able to host some of these amazing older films. I don't know if just people out there, if you know this, I'm always trying to get people on board with stuff I think is cool, sometimes to an annoying degree. But I tell everybody, try and get YouTube on your TV because there's just so many great things that you can see on it. There's meditations, everything in your life that you would need, like how to put, wall socket in your house. You can sit there and watch it. And then there's these great movies too, and it has a full movie of this. Sometimes they're hidden a little bit, and I don't know if that's because of copyright. Maybe it's not supposed to be there. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes they're being uploaded by just a fan who's enthusiastic about it, and they're not really supposed to be doing that.
Right, but it's impossible to tell sometimes if you're even looking at it. But anyway, this is there, and it looks like it's been there a while, and it's just really neat. And I don't want to give any spoilers about the actual story, but it is a seafaring film. Which was kind of my theme of what I was looking for. And it was one that I hadn't seen, and I love that story. So I think the thing that's so cool about it is that it is sort of like a pirate movie as well. And there's this guy. Have you seen it, Richard?
Yes, I have seen it, but my favorite reference to it is in the movie Zodiac.
Oh, I haven't seen Zodiac. What's the reference?
Well, in Zodiac there is a reference to a film that played in a revival house, and it was The Most Dangerous Game. And there's a clue in the story about a poster that was made up for the revival screening of The Most Dangerous Game, and that's where it kind of came up. And I had heard the film before, but I hadn't seen it before. But once I saw Zodiac, I then followed the rabbit hole down and found The Most Dangerous Game. And it's 1932, actually, and it's Joel McCrea. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So that was really neat, and that's really all I need to say about it, just to kind of turn people onto it, because it's such a swashbuckling type of film, and there is a major twist that I'm going to avoid talking about. But like, as the guy is shipwrecked, he starts to sort of understand that what's going on around him is not, he's not really being rescued. There's something else going on. So it's just a really neat film, and I just loved it. Recommend it.
And it's go ahead, Dave.
This is also another great example of Hollywood ingenuity, getting the most bang for their buck in terms of cast and crew, because this was filmed at the same time, around the same time as King Kong, using a lot of the same cast, a lot of the same writers, and I just thought that little tidbit was interesting when I first heard it. I used to teach this short story too, only to middle schoolers.
Yeah. Or are you a teacher as well? Oh, that's great.
Retired teacher.
Sure. Yeah, I'm almost there myself.
Well, I know that it's a movie worth investigating, so anybody who's listening who hasn't seen The Most Dangerous Game, there's a recommendation for you. Dave, how about your recommendation? What have you found off the beaten path?
Okay, my next one is called Crack in the World from 1965. And this one's also fairly low budget. It's a sci-fi disaster movie that features one of my favorite archetypes, and that's the arrogant scientist who doesn't think or stop to pause to consider that what he's planning to do could go badly. And this time it goes really badly for the entire world. And this one stars Dana Andrews, who I've always loved Dana Andrews, especially his film noir stuff. And he plays Dr. Sorensen, who believes that launching a nuclear missile into the Earth's crust will release enough magma to provide the world with just an almost inexhaustible source of energy. And he ignores the concerns of his former partner, who also happens to be his wife's ex-lover, and he launches the missile before getting approval from the government. And what this does is cause an underground crack that triggers a massive series of earthquakes as it begins to grow, potentially circling the entire planet, unless they can stop it. And in the meantime, we learned that Dr. Sorensen's actually dying, and that explains some of his impatience. He's also increasingly suspicious that his wife and her ex-lover are, once again in love. And the movie relies on a lot of stock footage, which was typical of a lot of low-budget movies of the day. But it's pretty well assembled, and there's also some pretty decent sequences created just for the film. But to me, what really makes this story work is that it seems believable. I don't know how much of it is actually plausible, but at least while we're watching, we generally buy the premise. And its main character is interesting, and Andrews plays him really well. This is when his leading man days were mostly behind him, but he does a good job conveying Sorensen's, increasing awareness that he just might have killed everybody, while lashing out at his wife. It's nothing spectacular to look at, but it's a fairly smart movie considering the premise. And this is another one of those, I blind bought it simply because of the premise and the fact that Dana Andrews was in it, and I wasn't disappointed. Cool. It is available on Tubi right now, and at least for now on Blu-ray from Olive Films, but I don't know for how long because Olive Films has apparently ceased operating.
Uh-oh. So they just have what's in stock, whoever is distributing those.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think Kino Lorber has got the licenses for a lot of former Olive titles, but I haven't seen this one pop up yet. So it's just the Olive one that's available.
All right. Well, everybody get to Tubi and catch this, because I remember hearing about this movie, but I've never seen it. And Dana Andrews is an interesting actor. I've seen him in several things. I'm trying to remember. I watched him in a movie not too long ago that was recommended by Howard because it has Strother Martin in it, and it stars Jeffrey Hunter. It was one of his, and it was directed, I'm trying to remember, it was directed by Robert Conrad, the actor who was most famous probably for being on TV as Cannon on the TV show Cannon. And I'm trying to remember what the name of it was, Paranoia or something. Anyway, Dana Andrews is kind of an evil businessman that gets murdered by Jeffrey Hunter, and it's a side plot. But Dana Andrews ended up in a lot of these kinds of films where he was past the movie star era, but he was still a name, so they would plug him into these things. And I think a lot. We talked about Ray Milland not too long ago on the show. Same kind of thing. They were past the point where they were the handsome leading man, and now they had to use them however they could, and they'd take whatever jobs they could find. Nicole, I think we got a little bit of time if you could squeeze in your last film before you go.
Thanks, Richard. The last film is a documentary called American Promise. I saw it in over the summer. It was recommended to me by a woman at an event for the end of the school year. The event was held by a group of teachers, actually, and you can stream it on PBS.com if you have like a local PBS station or what have you. So it's available freely thanks to public television. Directed by Joe Brewster. Sorry, American Promise is directed by Joe Brewster and Michelle Stevenson. Now, the film is 2.5 hours, and it follows a middle-class African-American couple who capture the entire adolescence of their son, Idris, and his best friend, Sean, as they make their way through Dalton, which is one of the most prestigious private schools in the country. So the documentary spans 13 years throughout the boys' adolescence. And as the parents turn the cameras on Idris and Sean, the film chronicles the boys' paths as they diverge a little bit between the time that they're in kindergarten all the way through their high school graduation. Now, the movie actually won a jury award at the Sundance Film Festival in 2013. And the Producers Guild of America said that this movie represents complicated truths about America's struggle to come of age on issues of race, class, and opportunity. And I would say after watching the movie, I really liked it, but then it also made me concerned about what I see when I go to different public schools. I'm a I sub throughout the district, and I think so. I after watching the movie, I would agree with the producers of America with regards to issues of class and opportunity. For me, I think the movie is a reminder of the importance for parents to be involved in their kids' education, because the parents in this film, I don't know if they're upwardly mobile per se, but like they have resources, and both households are two-parent households. The parents are married, and they prioritize the quality of their son's education. And without that, you can really fall through the cracks. But these parents also, again, have resources. They're not rich, but they can take their kid to get tests. They have cars, they drive, but they also still face different various challenges between the two households, which is depicted in the movie. So I liked it. I think it was a good documentary, like on its own. And I like that the parents kind of stuck with it over time so that people could like view the story and like view what happened. There's also some karate in the movie. There's one of the parents forces like one of the sons to learn karate just to get him like involved in extracurricular activities, and he kind of sticks with that up until high school. So it's nice to see. I don't know any karate. I know a little bit of Wing Chun, but that was fun to watch.
I know karate, jiu-jitsu, and 5 other Japanese words.
Oh, Richard, I don't want to run into you in a dark alley.
For a minute there, I thought we were scared. Yeah, he was making a play on words there.
Yeah, that's sorry. I appreciate anybody who studies martial arts. I understand that there are all kinds of positive influences that can come from that, and parents getting their kids involved in something, that's probably the most important thing, that they find something that the kids can get involved in and stick with. It sounds like an interesting film. I looked it up. It's available. Apparently it's streaming on Pluto and Tubi, and you can also rent or buy it on Prime, so people should be able to get a hold of it if they're interested in seeing it. Do you have anything quick that you want to plug?
Not really. I am only plugging the films.
Okay.
If anyone listening has heard anyone that you're interested in, I would encourage you to check them out before they fall into oblivion. I don't really have anything new coming. I'm behind on a TV show, on some video editing and articles, but I may post a clip for Home Movie Day of a high school dance team's rendition of the song "I Get So Lonely" by Janet Jackson. But I don't know yet. So,
well,
American Promise, Nothing Left Undone, and From Jailhouse to Millhouse.
There you go.
That's what I have.
If I can find links for those other things, I'll put them in the notes. I'll definitely have links to a couple of these because that's easy enough to do. Thanks, Nicole, for joining us. I'm sorry you're going to miss the rest of the show, but I do know that you have to get to work, so you head off.
Me too. Yes. And
All
so
right.
I'll be checking out the rest of it on YouTube and
Excellent.
where I get my podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll jump ahead to my second film since that'll allow me to catch up with everybody. We got the sad news this week that Terry Garr had passed away, and I've always been a fan of hers. She was a terrific comedic actress, but she also had some nice dramatic roles. A month ago, when I was getting ready to watch Megalopolis, I was thinking about going back and checking out some other Francis Coppola films, and I've had this movie on Laserdisc for 25 years and still had not watched it. And when I came across it on the Criterion Channel, I said, well, I'll just watch it here and catch up with it now. And so my second off-the-beaten-path film is One from the Heart, which was Francis Coppola's kind of artistic flop musical. It's maybe one of the most beautiful films you will ever see. It is shot in a stunning color palette. It's realized with a very inventive set design. It's supposed to be taking place in Las Vegas and in a Las Vegas neighborhood and at the Las Vegas airport, but all of the scenes are sets, all of the locations are sets in the studio. It's lit in a very interesting way, and sometimes the artifice is deliberate, that you're kind of supposed to notice that the car junkyard is not really a car junkyard, it's a set, but it's still beautiful to look at. It's kind of a throwback to the style of films from the 40s and 50s that used color in interesting ways to draw us in and were set bound instead of trying to do everything on location, making that transition in the way filmmaking techniques were doing in that period of time. And like I said, it stars Terry Garr. It also stars Frederick Forrest, who was a regular in Coppola films. He was in Apocalypse Now, and he's one of the voices in, along with Cindy Williams, they're the two characters who are carrying on the conversation that Gene Hackman is listening to. And I remember him best as Julie's father from Valley Girl, because I saw Valley Girl about 10,000 times. That was one of my wife's favorite movies, and so we saw it constantly. But he was both he and Terry Garr were Academy Award nominated actors. They had appeared in their Academy Award nominated films just prior to making this movie. She was nominated for Tootsie, and he was nominated for The Rose, and they were both, kind of at a breakthrough level, but they didn't quite break through. This film was not the one that was going to push them over the top, and it was a debacle because Coppola had financing at one point, lost financing, spent his own money making the movie, and then spent 10 years trying to catch up with all the money that he lost from making the movie. But
Does Terry Garr sing in it?
No, not really. She does dance, and I was a little surprised at the frequency with which she was disrobed, because I didn't realize that there was that much nudity in the film. But
is that right? Well, you said musical. I had a whole different thing in mind.
Yeah, no, it's the music is it actually did get an Academy Award nomination for the music score and song score by Tom Waits, and he is accompanied. He is accompanied frequently in the vocals by Crystal Gale. So the music is not, there's not singing on screen, but there are scenes where the singing takes place while things on screen are going on, and the singing is the kind of the focus of what's happening. It's reflecting what's happening in the movie. And it is
I'll have to tell my brother because he just loves Tom Waits.
Okay, well then I
wonder if he's even heard of it.
If he's a Tom Waits fan, I'm sure he has, because this was
okay.
It was very good. The music was excellent, and like I said, he and Crystal Gale, you wouldn't think that they would be a natural pairing of the voices, but I thought they sounded great together, and they played off of each other very nicely. And like I said, the movie it's also got Harry Dean Stanton in it, and being his Harry Dean Stanton best.
He makes every movie better.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are like that. They make all the movies that they're in are better, and Harry Dean Stanton's one of those people. It's a sad film, but it's also a heartfelt film, and I think in the long run, it's a positive kind of thing. And like I said, you could watch it with the sound off and have a good experience. Not care anything about the story, but just watch the way the movie looks, and I think you could enjoy it. Dave, have you seen this film?
I've seen most of Coppola's films. Unfortunately, this one is on my list of shame. But you have piqued my interest. Coppola is one of those strange directors where his failures are often as interesting as his triumphs.
Yeah.
And you said it's on the Criterion channel?
Yes, it's playing on Criterion right now, so if you have access to that channel, you can watch it. I'm not sure which version I saw. I didn't check the time. The original theatrical version was like 109 minutes. Then they did a second version that was like 103 minutes, and then earlier, maybe I have that wrong. Maybe it's the one that's 99 minutes, and then they had a reprise version which apparently was released just this last year, and it played on some Fathom events, and it was like 102 minutes. So there's a longer version, there's a shorter version, and apparently it's just some scenes are shorter or longer, and apparently a couple things are moved around. I just looked at the one that was. There were two listed though on the channel on Criterion, so I know I watched the longer one. I didn't watch the reprise version.
He loves tweaking with his movies.
Yes,
he puts George Lucas to shame. But quite often his tweaks actually do improve the films. I remember not being that impressed with the Cotton Club when I first saw it, but the revised, updated, expanded version is actually a lot better.
The same thing could definitely be said for Godfather 3.
I agree with that one. But the real shock to me was he went back and re-edited Apocalypse Now for the third time. Now it's called the Final Cut, I think. And it runs around 3 hours. And it turned a movie that I initially hated into one that probably on my top 100 list.
Good deal.
Why did you think that the musical one with Terry Garr that Richard brought, why did you think that was on your shame list?
Because I always meant to get around to seeing it because I am a fan of Coppola. I think he's an interesting director. I just, for some reason or another, I've never gotten around to it. When it initially came out, it was pushed as a musical, which was not my thing. And
that's kind of what I thought you meant, yeah. Sounds interesting to me. I like musicals. It sort of reminds me of that Robert Altman movie, Popeye. Same thing. It's like, okay, he's going to try a musical. Did he do other musicals, Richard?
Who, Coppola?
Yeah.
Well, Cotton Club is a musical, but that would probably
Didn't he write? Isn't Finian's Rainbow a musical?
Yes, it is, and he directed that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was thinking of Apocalypse Now guy, kind of tough guy, helicopter movie guy, but that's interesting. That's a couple musicals.
Well, I do like musicals now, but back then I was 16 years old.
In a different world, yes.
Militate against them when you're 16, yeah.
Did you guys have other films that you wanted to include? Because I gave Nicole a chance to offer a third film, and I don't want to deny you guys if you have a third film that you wanted to include.
That's up to you. I mean, I have 3, but if you wanted to cut it at 2, it's entirely your choice.
Well, I have a third also, and since we're let me go first on this one because there's kind of a.
Have two. So how about you guys just do your third?
That's what we're going to do. One from the Heart, when it opened in very limited release. It was hard to see and hard to find, and I bought it on Laserdisc primarily because I wanted to see it and never had the chance. And of course, it just sat in my collection because I neglected it for, like I said, 25 years. I don't know why, but just never got around to it. But I've got another experience, and this is a very contemporary experience that is fresh in my mind and kind of puts me in a heated mood, so I need to get it off my chest. Talking about being off the beaten path, I drove 400 miles yesterday to be able to see Juror Number 2.
Wow. Was it worth it?
It was not playing in Austin, which is near where I live, and the only theater that I could find in Texas was in Dallas, which is 200 miles north of me. So we made the 3-hour trip up to see the film, and then we had a 3-hour trip back. So, like I said, I literally drove 400 miles to see it. The film is excellent.
Wow.
The film is excellent. It's very good. I don't know that it would be a big commercial success, and maybe that's why Warner Brothers made the decision not to do much with it. But they are shoveling it off like it's something that they stepped in, as opposed to something that they should be proud of. And they should be proud of it. It's quite good. Nicholas Hoult is excellent in this film, and the story is, look, it's a courtroom drama. It's got an interesting perspective and twist in it. It forces us to confront some moral questions that I think are very interesting, and it doesn't have an easy resolution to what's going on. And in the end, there's no such thing as a happy ending in the American judicial system. Somebody is going to be hurt. Either the victim's family because they think justice has been denied them, or an innocent person who has been treated inappropriately, who has an injustice imposed on them, or jurors who are obligated to participate in this process and they have their own short-sighted needs. It's a little bit like 12 Angry Men, only a more contemporary version with a much different twist. By the way, I think it's a better jury movie than 12 Angry Men because it really interacts with the way jurors are supposed to interact in a jury room, as opposed to the kind of the advocacy that you get in 12 Angry Men, although 12 Angry Men is a great movie. I'm not sure it's a good presentation of group dynamics.
Is it
I can't believe
history, or is it take place in history? Or
no, it's a contemporary film.
Yeah, because
I can't believe
a lot of that is the time of it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
it just stuns me that after decades of giving them every movie he's ever directed, that Warner Brothers is doing this to him, and it might even it might be his last film. I know it's been touted by a lot of people that this could be his last film, and to me that's just a crappy move by Warner Brothers.
Now, I heard a spin on it this morning that I thought I don't believe, but it's somebody's going to buy into it, and that was that Warner Brothers made the decision that this movie would never do better than opening in the single digits. In other words, it would be they might make $3 to $4 million on a wide release, and that would be an embarrassment to Clint. So instead, they decided to treat it as if it's a showcase release for Academy Award consideration, but they're not putting any Academy Award money behind it. They're not pushing it in that direction. I just think that they have made a terrible mistake from a professional point of view, because look, other filmmakers are going to look at this and say, Clint Eastwood has made movies for this company for 50 plus years. They've been consistently good. He's had some that have underperformed in the last couple of years, but he's also had some spectacular successes in the last few years. Richard Jewell and American Sniper were very successful films, and they're not that long ago. And by the way, I know there's talk that this might be his last film. That's only because he's 94. He said he's already gone back to work. He's looking at other scripts. He's looking for something else to make. Good for him.
Good. Well, I mean, Woody Allen hasn't made a successful movie in decades, and they keep making, extending him that olive branch. I just don't understand why.
Yeah, no, it's shameful, and I think there's already been an effect. My understanding is that Christopher Nolan is not interested in working with Warner Brothers anymore after the way they have kind of treated some of their longtime associates, and
he was pissed off what they did with Tenet, wasn't he?
Yeah. And so it's like the studio is alienating talent instead of working with them. Look, if they have a problem and their analytics, their algorithms have told them that the movie's not going to make any money, let's find a way to get it out there for people to see. This is in 35 theaters around the country. They said 50, but apparently it's only 35 theaters around the country. One in the entire state of Texas. Excuse me, that's not good. That's just
not playing anywhere in Oregon either.
It's just not right. And so it's off the beaten path, but it was good.
It'll be like a 10 anywhere. I mean, you think it'll be rated really highly? Because it's funny. I remember Sing Street was like that when it first came out. It was kind of limited. We had to drive all the way to Riverside to see it, and then it just took off, and then it was everywhere.
Well, I don't remember Sing Street getting a wider release, but I do remember. But it's Sing Street was like a imported indie film, so you don't really expect it to have 2,500 screens, 4,000 screens, but I'm sure that it had more than 35 screens at some point or other.
Probably did, and it had the guy. He was really famous for Begin. I think it was called Begin Again or something like that.
Once.
But yeah, I was just wondering if maybe this will catch on, and do you think it'll be like a 10?
Well, I don't always put a lot of faith in the aggregate sites. Rotten Tomatoes has it, I think, in the 90s, and 90%. So it's the audience is very happy with it. The audience that's seen it is very happy with it. Critics who have seen it and reviewed it, I've seen one or two weak reviews, but most of them have been very solid. I went on Letterboxd to look and see if any of our compatriots here on the Lamb had maybe seen the movie, and one or two had. They didn't have full reviews up, but some of the reviews I saw said basically it's your dad's new favorite movie. So the three of us that are on the show would probably like it, but apparently it wouldn't go for anybody in the 30 and under category because it doesn't feature any gunplay. There's not any sex. There's not any language issues. It's all kind of an intellectual movie about moral quandaries, but it's very well made, as any Eastwood film is. It looks good. It's very professional.
Did you enjoy your trip?
Yes. Now that is the only thing that keeps me from exploding completely is that I don't mind getting in the car and taking a drive. We had lunch at a couple of one place on the way up, and on the way back we stopped at a place that is 100 miles north of us, and I always like going there when I get the chance for kolaches and cheese.
I was gonna say, wouldn't it be funny if it was kind of a rigorous trip and you didn't enjoy it, and then here it gets re-released right by your house there in Texas? I would have to laugh.
I'm sure that some people would enjoy the futility of that experience. I would not have been one of them. So, Dave, what's the other film that you have?
Okay, I just finished watching this one last week, and it's for a Blu-ray review that I'll be posting next week, so technically I haven't written about it yet. And it was a pleasant surprise, although it's pretty much a Debbie Downer, and that's a movie called Cora. And it's about the title character, who's apparently one of many working in isolation for a company trying to fix things after this airborne mist has killed most of the population. And going outside without a mask is almost instantly fatal. And so a lot of the film is her working in isolation. But when equipment starts malfunctioning and she eventually loses contact with her so-called superiors, she ventures out to try to find a colleague at the next outpost. And when she gets there, he's already dead. He committed suicide. and he left a note explaining that the company that she's working for had long since abandoned trying to save humanity, and they went into hiding themselves. And they just simply left Cora and all the other ones to die alone in their bunkers. So she decides to find headquarters, and when she arrives, she's captured by a gang of psychotics, and she's later rescued by someone who looks exactly like her. And I won't reveal why, just in case anyone wants to check this out. But it's a very well-made and acted film, especially by the star, who's Felicia Rhinelander, who I'd never heard of. I'd never heard of the directors either. And she's on screen alone by herself for a great deal of the running time. And it's another one of those movies that does a lot with very little. It's not effects driven, although it's an interesting looking movie. The aesthetic kind of reminded me of this Russian film called Stalker.
I've seen that, yeah.
And but it is a very bleak film, maybe even a little nihilistic. But I was pleasantly surprised. And it's on Tubi right now, and it's just been released on Blu-ray.
Spell her name? Cora?
Huh?
C-O-R-A.
Yeah, Cora, yeah.
Yeah. That sounds interesting to me. I like ones where people are kind of cloistered by themselves, and and they have to act that way. So
it's at times it's deliberately paced. It's one of those that doesn't spoon feed the audience. A lot of its plot points and surprises are slowly revealed. It's extremely violent at times. Just when it gets you into the mood, into that frame of mind where it's not going to be, and there's sudden bursts of violence that are kind of jarring. But it's definitely worth your time if the bleak apocalyptic stuff is your thing.
I like it how the company, it's revealed that the company that's, taking care of everything is really not out for her good. That's interesting.
Well, I tell you, you had an interesting theme going for your off the beaten path films this week, and most of those things would be things that I would check out. Cora sounds like it's, again, since it's available, it would be easy for me to look at, so I'm going to try and give it a chance sometime this week, although I'm busy doing another podcast later this week. I got to get going on some of those things.
Is that somebody I think I know?
Yes, there you go. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to deal with our exit question of the week. But first, some words from a fellow Lamb Podcast Network show.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, Bubba Wheat.
Hey, did you know the song Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel, he was actually talking about his penis?
What? The whole time?
Yeah, it's, he was talking about having sex. And did you know that the song Blinding Lights by The Weeknd was actually about driving under the influence?
Under the influence? I figured driving because of the lights, but under the influence as well?
And did you know that Weapon of Choice was actually about Dune?
No, now I know you're lying.
Could be. And at Lyrical Innuendo, we actually discuss these songs and more and decide if they are really about sex, drugs, or if they're just rock and roll. And you can find the newest episodes on Spotify and everything else at rabbitholepodcasts.com.
Well, we're back, and it's time for us to finish up the show. The exit question of the week, I'm not quite sure how it popped into my head, but it's one that I thought of, and I thought that this would be an interesting contrast to the films that we talked about this week. Since they're off the beaten path, they're often things that are in people's heads that they can't get out of their head. And so the exit question of the week is, if you were to write a book about a film covering its themes, history, social impact, or just entertainment value, what film would that be and why? And I had 2 or 3 that popped in my head immediately, but I want to make sure that our guests get a chance to offer their thoughts first. So, Dave Anderson, let's start with you. Have you got a film that you think, I could write a book about something about this movie?
Yeah, that was a great question, by the way.
I think it's a great question, too. Good one, yeah.
It may reappear down the road.
I spent more time thinking about this one.
On it, really.
I think I spent more time on this than I did actually on my list. And I finally chose the original taking of Pelham 123. Historically, It's kind of underappreciated for the year it was released, because 1974, in my humble opinion, was one of the greatest years for movies. This movie was a hit. It had an incredible cast, an underappreciated director, Joseph Sargent, although he ended his career on a sour note with Jaws: The Revenge. But I've always been fascinated by this film. The way it was shot, how parts of it were filmed right in the middle of busy New York streets. The film was quietly influential on future films with a similar premise, even Die Hard to a certain extent. To me, it has one of the greatest movie villains in movie history, played by Robert Shaw as Mr. Blue. And it's inspired a couple of really terrible remakes. I just think the backstory behind this would be fascinating.
I agree. What a great idea. Yeah, it just reminds me of one of those, I don't know, don't assault me for this, but like a Tom Clancy novel or something like that, you know? I don't know, just getting into the nitty-gritty of the details and stuff like that.
And I'm pretty sure no one's ever written a book about this one.
Not that I know of, although I went to a presentation of the film and saw an introduction by the curator, I think it's of the New York Museum of Modern Art, or the Museum of Film, talking about this film, and it was a very interesting talk. I'm not sure if it's available online anyplace, but it seems like you are opening up a vein here that would make it easy to take advantage of. And there are things about this movie that, like when you talk about the culture, the guy who plays the mayor looks like the guy who would later become the mayor of New York.
Yeah, totally.
It's just really funny. And of course, all of the we know the kind of the impact that the film had on other filmmakers. Tarantino steals the idea of all of the characters in Reservoir Dogs having names from this film. You know, their particular colors. You know, blue, green, brown, gray. I was just going to say, and anybody who was interested in what Wilson looked like on the other side of the fence in Home Improvement would be surprised to discover he's carrying a machine gun.
That's true. And it also would be fascinating because, you know, I've read a lot about the tumultuous filming of Jaws, and some of it instigated by Robert Shaw, who was notoriously hammered a lot of the time. It'd be interesting to see, you know, to learn about how he was on the set of this one.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting contrast, because it was around that same time. Robert Shaw made some fantastic films in this 3-year period. He did The Sting, Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, Jaws, and that was in, you know, those were 3 years in a row, and those were fantastic films. And he's a big part of the success of those films. But I do know he was a bit of a handful on Jaws. I think I mentioned to you that last year I went to see the Shark is Broken on stage on Broadway in New York.
Yeah.
And it was a very good story, and I've read several of those books about the making of Jaws. Jaws would be one of the films that I was considering, but I have another one that I'll talk about in just a second. Damien, how about you? Is there a movie that you think there's enough for you that you would want to talk about in a book?
I could absolutely write a book about The Village by M. Night Shyamalan. It's just the creatures that we do not speak of is such a wonderful metaphor, and I would look at it from a societal point of view. I mean, since all three of us are teachers, I mean, you know how you get that anticipatory set going at the beginning where you kind of stir up things and you get the students thinking about certain topics. And then by the end of it, what you hope for is that, you know, they have sort of an epiphany and they sort of come to it. Now, one of the frustrations for me about teaching at the community college is that these students are about 19. So a lot of the truths that I'm giving them, like we studied Huckleberry Finn, and a lot of the students just think it's a silly novel, but I think it's the darkest novel ever written about mankind. And so I know they're not going to get it. Some get it, you know, but later on, because someone told me that when I was at Cal State Fullerton, you know, but, you know, later on in life, sometimes you get stuff. And so you can't really hope for, your whole class to go, wow, and pat you on the back. You just kind of have to sow those seeds about human nature and things like that. So I think the creature that we do not speak of is like a metaphor for what the grown-ups do to protect the young ones. I mean, God knows I've lied to my kids about Santa Claus. I've lied to my kids about, things that, you shouldn't do that but you really know they're going to love doing it, things like that. So
Rex went to live on a farm, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So
we have a lot of pets on the farm.
That film is terrifying, but then when she jumps over I shouldn't give spoilers. It's such a wonderful movie. Anyway, go see it out there if you're listening, if you haven't seen it. But I could write a book about what transpires in that film.
All right. Well, we talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago on the show, and I remember you being quite intrigued with the film, and I think
it's one of my, fixation.
I could see why you would want to write about it. Well, I've been thinking for a dozen years of trying to put together a book. My ambition exceeds my commitment on James Bond. James Bond is my favorite fictional character. I have seen all of the movies multiple times, and I think that there are things to talk about here, but sometimes it's just like from a fan perspective, and anybody can appreciate that without necessarily writing a book. But if I were to write a book about one of those films for the particular impact it had on the film community and on the history of cinema, I would probably pick out Goldfinger and use that as the subject of the book that I wrote on James Bond, because Goldfinger is the point at which the character became a cultural phenomena. It was the film that broke through at the box office. It was the film that became a touchstone for generations to come. It became a template for so many action movies in the future. There are interesting stories about the casting of the film, about decisions that were made, about some of the little fights that they had to engage in to be able to make the film. The fact that they actually let the character be called Pussy Galore in the film was one of those things that you just say, some studio had to be going, wait, I'm not sure we should be doing this, and somebody had to just decide it. And the director, I think, is a big part of that, and the actors, of course. Sean Connery was, I think this is his peak in the films. He's fine in Thunderball. He's bored on the next two films that he makes after that. And Sean Connery, in my view, is the essential James Bond. So the first three films are perfection, and this is the top of the heap of those perfections. So that's another reason why I would pick Goldfinger to write about, because and the 60s is an era of incredible change that's taking place worldwide. Some of it for the better, some of it for the worse. I tell you what, another thing that might influence me is I recently read a book from a guy, I'm trying to remember his name. It's presented as a Bond book. It's The Man Who Saved Great Britain, but it's really a book that talks about how Britain's colonial past is something that everybody should hang their head over, and we shouldn't let Ian Fleming try and gloss it over with this fictional character. And this guy was grousing about British culture at the time, and I thought, you are seeing this in such a completely different way than I think the way the rest of the world saw it. And I kind of understand it. You're pissed off about some things in the world, and you're certainly entitled to write about them, but portraying it as being a James Bond, it was frustrating, because I bought it when I was in New York, and I bought it at one of the famous bookstores there, and I thought, oh wow, this will be interesting to read. And I started reading it, and I hate stop reading books. I think there may be 3 books in my life that I started and then just closed the book on it and said, I'm not going to finish this. I don't want to. I'm not interested anymore. I rarely do that. I kind of feel like I've committed to the book. I should go ahead and finish it. And in this one, I closed the book several times. I said, I think I could skip this. But then I kept reading because I kept thinking there's going to be something more about the James Bond character in it. And there was a little bit. He actually doesn't get to the Bond until page 73 in the book. It pissed me off. And like I said, if I was writing a book, I would make sure that the character, the actor, and the author would be front and center, but the culture would be part of the story as well. And
sure.
I was very young at the time all that happened. I have memories though of all the TV commercials, of trading cards that came with the bubble gum. It was like baseball cards. You had the James Bond trading cards, and I hadn't seen any of the movies, but I had some of those cards, and I just was excited about the idea of what was going on there and listening to the music. So it was just...
It's so funny that you say that, is that this morning I don't know why, but I was remembering the flavor of Topps gum that came in the Star Wars series cards. Now you're a little, I don't know, I don't want to say you're older than me, Rich, you're about my age, but just a little bit. But yeah, those were just, you'd go into the liquor store and look around and you'd like, okay, I want to get a Star Wars Blue series. And I was just thinking of that this morning. Isn't that funny? And now you're talking about gum.
And that gum, of course, was all chalky and
it was terrible.
Hard and terrible. Yeah, you're ready to spit it out immediately because it wasn't really the gum that you were after. It was the cards.
Exactly.
And like I said, the culture at the time was strongly influenced by things that were happening in films, and Goldfinger is one of the films that kind of pushed that in the culture. Even though it wasn't hip enough to appreciate the Beatles, it makes a Beatles reference, So it's one of those films that I think is a turning point in the culture, and that's why I would pick it.
Hey, Richard, I don't know if you've read the book Some Kind of Hero. I posted a link for you.
Okay.
It's an exhaustive history of the James Bond films, and it goes into incredible detail about every one of them, I think all the way through Skyfall, I think.
All right.
And it's fascinating. It's 700 pages.
Oh, Lord. That's like
and it is a great read for any Bond fan.
Good. I have dozens of Bond books on my shelf, and I'm going to have to look and see. It could be sitting out there, and I have read it, and I just don't remember it because I've looked at a lot of them. But if I don't have it, it's going to be the first thing that I do when I get off the podcast here is order it, because I'm going to definitely want to read it. That's been our show this week. We've taken a path that not a lot of people have taken. We talked about some films that are going to be easy to find and some that are going to be hard to find. Hopefully anybody listening will let us know if you followed up and watched any of these movies and enjoyed them, and give whoever recommended them a pat on the back, because we always appreciate hearing back from people. I want to give my guests who are still with us a chance to promote anything that they have that they would like people to turn their eyes and ears to. Damien, why don't we start with you? What have you got that people might look for?
Well, I have. I did the Call of the Wild a series, and I call them chapter walkthroughs. And my podcast is called But I Digress. It's changed to But I Digress. It used to be Riley on Film, and it's changed after like 3 or 4 years. So it's kind of a big deal for me. And it's just kind of people give me a hard time for going off track. So I just said, hey, if that's how you're going to label me, that's what my show will be. I'll go with the fray. So I invite people on my show to just kind of go nuts and just whatever comes up, we'll talk about it. Refreshing. So I've been doing the Time Machine, and I've been reading a chapter. I did about 2 a week, I think I did it. And I got them all done. There's 12 chapters. And I got through it all. And then I'm doing a culminating activity, and I'm having Mr. Richard coming on the show, and Mr. Howard Kastner coming on the show. I was going to have my father, Jerry, come on the show, but he had to back out because he's got some stuff he's got to do. so he can't come on. But I'm so excited about you coming on, Rich.
Well, we'll have some time travel talk on your show, and I'll make sure to put a link in for everybody to find it.
It's on Spotify mode. That's really the heart of it, but it's on all those places. But that's really where you find it.
All right. And Dave, how about you? I know that you've got a review coming of that Blu-ray that you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, two things actually. Interesting. Mine's also book related. I decided to do some fiction for the first time in years, and just for fun, put it on Amazon. It's called Creektown. It's a collection of offbeat zombie stories. It's available as an ebook or a paperback. It's all in fun, and my daughter did the cover, and the cover's incredible.
Excellent.
And now that I've seen Alien Romulus 3 times, I think it's time to put together my definitive list ranking all the Alien films. And so I'll be doing that in the next couple of weeks. And I am leaving the Alien versus Predator films off because they are hot garbage.
I'm sorry, you're just to, I mean, if I don't know, maybe somebody else doesn't know. Is yours about the kittens? Is that the name of
Free Kittens Movie Guide? That's Dave's.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I've got you bookmarked. I'll go ahead and look at that. That sounds so interesting, man.
Well, I don't have anything nearly as interesting, just the usual catching up with whatever I've seen in a theater, and I haven't seen much in a theater lately. I did go to a concert a week ago where the orchestra, the Austin Symphony, accompanied The Empire Strikes Back, so that was a fun experience, but I'm not really a music critic, so I didn't have a lot to say just about the experience, so you might enjoy that. And I will have a review up soon of Juror Number 2, and it will have a very strong recommendation with it, although it's going to be tough for people to find it. Hopefully, it will get a streaming release at some point. There hasn't been any clear talk about what's going to happen with the film after it's had this 35-screen release. We'll see what happens, because I'm sure they got to get their money back somehow. And
yeah,
it's like I said, it's been a while since we did rants, raves, and reviews on the show, and I feel a little bit like I was doing some ranting earlier. So that we'll call it quits on that note. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. I'm sorry that Nicole had to leave a little early and that we lost one of our guests before the show started, but I appreciated everything that you guys talked about, and most of these films I'm going to get a chance to see. I don't know if I'll ever catch up with 2 of the documentaries that Nicole recommended, but American Promise is something that looks like it's available and I might be able to track down. So until next time, this one's from the heart. We'll catch you on the Lambcast. Bye.
You've been listening to the Lambcast. If you have an idea for a show or would like to join us on the Lambcast, contact us at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Find us on Facebook, just search for Lambcast, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Lambcast. And you can find us on YouTube as well. The Lamb site can be found at largeassmovieblogs.com. We'd also love it if you would leave a review on iTunes.